For centuries, a single system shaped how individuals thought, calculated, built, and understood the world. This system did not conquer lands with armies. It conquered minds with ideas. It moved silently through libraries, schools, and workshops, spreading from one civilization to another, evolving, adapting, and embedding itself so deeply into human life that today most people are not even aware of its existence. And through all of this, it achieved something that almost no intellectual tradition in history managed to accomplish. It didn't just survive, it became invisible. Because this was not just knowledge, it was a system that could renew itself endlessly. Welcome to this hidden architecture where ideas, power, and civilization collide, where nothing is as ordinary as it seems. This system did not belong to a single state, a single religion, or a single geography. It emerged, developed, and expanded through a network of thinkers, scholars, and translators, people who understood a fundamental truth. Knowledge is not static. It can be transferred, improved, and scaled. And when designed correctly, it can outlive the civilizations that created it. The story begins in a place that most people today only recognize superficially, a place known through romanticized images of domes, manuscripts, and robed scholars. But the reality was far more complex, far more structured, and far more powerful. In the 9th century, in the city of Baghdad, there was an institution that functioned less like a library and more like a modern engine. At the center of this structure was the House of Wisdom. Here, knowledge was not just stored but actively processed. Greek philosophy, Indian mathematics, Persian administrative knowledge, and older Mesopotamian insights all merged into a single system. But this convergence was not static. It was active, deliberate, and structured. Scholars translated texts, but they did not stop there. They analyzed them, questioned them, developed them, and integrated them into new frameworks. The first way to understand this system lies here. The goal was not to preserve knowledge, it was to transform it into new versions. And this transformation required design. Unlike many previous civilizations that treated knowledge as sacred and untouchable, this system viewed knowledge as a tool that must be used, developed, and applied. And for the first time in history, knowledge became part of an organized production cycle. Ideas were the input, inquiry was the process, innovation became the output. But systems do not operate on ideas alone, they run on incentives. This is where the story shifts from philosophy to structure. Because what truly made this system powerful was not just intellectual curiosity. It was how it was financed, how it was rewarded, and how it was sustained. Scholars were not isolated individuals working in darkness. They were part of a larger economic and political structure. Rulers understood something critical. Knowledge could evolve into power, governance, military advantage, and economic growth. And for that reason, they did something revolutionary. They invested in it. Books were commissioned, translations were funded, scholars were paid, and in some cases, authors were rewarded based on the physical weight of their works. Knowledge was, quite literally, treated as a material asset. This created a feedback loop. More funding led to more research. More research led to more knowledge. And these innovations increased the value of the system even further. This is how knowledge became measurable. And once it became scalable, it became unstoppable. From Baghdad, ideas spread westward to Andalusia. Cities like Cordoba evolved into intellectual centers. They moved north into Europe. Translated texts began to shape universities. They spread east into Persia and Central Asia. Scholars continued to develop existing systems further. This was not the influence of a single empire expanding outward. It was the expansion of a system. And this system had its own rules: question assumptions, identify ideas, analyze results, build upon previous knowledge. Today these rules may seem ordinary, but at the time they were revolutionary. They represented a shift from authority-based knowledge to truth-based knowledge, and that shift changed everything. Mathematics evolved from arithmetic into algebra. Medicine moved from tradition to systematic diagnosis. Astronomy advanced from observation to calculation. Optics transformed from philosophy into applied science. No advancement stood alone. They were all interconnected, supporting the larger system. This is the second path. The strength of the system was not in individual effort, but in collective accumulation. No single scholar built this system alone, but each contributed to it significantly. And for a time, this system operated with remarkable efficiency. But no system is immune to change. Over time, political instability increased, support declined, funding became inconsistent, and perhaps most importantly, the culture of inquiry began to change. A system once built on questioning slowly transformed into one focused on preservation. Innovation declined, production decreased, the feedback loop approached collapse. This is where the system began to disappear. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly. Fewer new ideas, less analysis, more repetition. Until at some point, the system stopped producing as it once did. External events accelerated this process. Invasions, conflicts, and economic disruptions damaged structures and scattered scholars. But these were not the root cause. They were merely triggers. The real cause was internal. The system had lost its ability to sustain itself. And when a system built on continuous production stops producing, it does not collapse immediately. It slowly dissolves. Meanwhile, in other parts of the world, the system was being adopted, adapted, and restructured. European scholars translated the same texts, learned the same methods, and built their own systems. But they added something new: institutional continuity. Universities, the printing press, and later industrialization allowed knowledge to grow even further. What began as a network evolved into an infrastructure. And when knowledge becomes infrastructure, it becomes power. This brings us to the present. The world we live in today is built upon this system. Algorithms process knowledge. Universities produce research. Companies invest in innovation. States compete for technology. But the structure remains the same: input, process, output. The difference lies in scale. Knowledge is no longer rare. It is unlimited. But this introduces a new problem. When everything is accessible, nothing feels valuable. When knowledge is everywhere, attention becomes insignificant. And this creates a paradox. We possess more knowledge than ever before in history, but understanding is not progressing at the same pace. Consumption has replaced production, repetition has replaced questioning, and in some cases the system is beginning to fail again. Rising education costs, the centralization of knowledge on platforms, heavy dependence on digital infrastructure, vulnerability to disruptions. If the system abandons meaningful production, if it focuses only on sustaining itself but stops expanding, the same fate will repeat. Because the lesson is simple: systems do not collapse when they are attacked. They collapse when they stop functioning. The network that once made knowledge invaluable can only survive if it continues to evolve. And this is the real warning behind this story. The system that shaped the modern world still exists. But like every system, It depends on one thing: continuous production, continuous questioning, continuous adaptation. If these cease to function, the outcome is inevitable, not a sudden collapse, but a slow loss of meaning. History does not repeat itself exactly, but its patterns are clear. And if you understand the system, you understand the future. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe. Because history doesn't just tell the past, it reveals the systems that shape the present,